Hi everyone, it's April at Fitness Focused. So before watching the video, I just wanted to give you a bit of an insight into what my previous goals were and how my training regime was. So on the video you're going to see that I was mainly focusing on legs along with a bit of chest. Reason for that is with my legs I did have a previous knee injury, which was a posterior cruciate ligament injury. So instead of opting for the surgery, I went down the route of having rehab, which meant I did need to do a lot of strengthening around the knee, so focusing on the quads and the hamstrings. And then a bit of chest was thrown in because that is seen as a weak area, so just wanted to put the chest movements in. I do add a bit of chest on a lot of total body sessions. So prior, my goal was weight loss, which I have achieved now. I'm at a weight which I'm comfortable with. But then I did want to focus in on increasing my calories to a level of maintenance. So during lockdown, I have worked on that. I've brought my calories up week by week, and then I'm at a stage where I am in maintenance. Now I don't have access to a lot of weights, whether it's being in lockdown or training from home. So my current training regime, I am just focusing on time under tension, increasing my rep range. And then once I do get back into the gym, I'm going to be looking at going into a calorie surplus. So with that, I'm going to increase my calories week by week and then monitor the changes to my body, make sure I'm not gaining too much weight or gaining too much fat. So once I've gone into a calorie surplus, I'm going to be then focusing on my lifts. So I'm going to monitor it each week, make sure I'm hitting my numbers, increasing my numbers, but also focusing on the technique to make sure I am getting the correct execution. So this video, as I say, you are going to see a lot of leg workout, but that is suitable to myself, and it's just to give you an indication really of the different leg exercises that I do along with the chest exercises. If you do have any questions, you can go over to our Facebook or Instagram page and ask any questions that you do need. Thank you.
Okay, hey guys, just giving you a walkthrough of how we normally go about performing April's sessions. We normally like to work with isolation, as you can see here, to begin. It's just a preference we've built up over time really to sort of help us focus on engaging the hamstrings and the quads prior to the main moves. Her previous lifestyle of doing sports has left her with quite dominating quads in terms of a lot of the big movements. Not to mention she's also had her right posterior ligament removed in the right leg, so there's a lot of imbalance between the legs that we had to work on from day one. So this just sort of helps us get into the groove and sort of get a feel for both sides of the legs working, everything engaging. There are things we do prior to this as well, like pre-warm-up routines. We'll cover that in another video in the future. For now, it's just giving an idea of how we like to set ourselves up for the session going forwards. A few things we like to look at with these, with the hamstring curl, we like to think about keeping the feet flexed about 90 degrees. This just sort of takes the calf out of the movement for us, gives us more of a psychological cue to feel the weight being pulled by the hamstring. I feel like when you let the feet relax, the calves can sort of help to pull. A bit like if you curl your wrist and your forearm feels like it's over engaging during a barbell curl. As for the leg extension, you can see here it's more about keeping the hips anchored into the chair. You see her using her little arms there to pull on the back of the seat, which can't quite reach the handle comfortably. And from there we'll keep the toes flexed again 90 degrees at the ankle. So you can really think about engaging the front of the shin, the tibialis anterior, which again, whether it's musculature or psychological, just gives more of a benefit to feeling the quads engage right through the leg. And then from here on we'll move into the main movements. So as you can see here, this is the box squat we've put in recently, because this sort of allows us to focus on power and stabilising the hips. There's a couple of reasons we throw this in. Number one, we shouldn't have to worry about depth. One thing April was really nervous about is going below parallel with her knee as it was. She wasn't sure the stability would be there to keep the knee on track. This sort of gives us an opportunity to forget about that altogether and focus on just the movement itself from the parallel straight up again. One reason I like to put these in with her especially is because it makes her stop dead at the box. She has to really focus on powering through from that bottom phase and generate a lot of tension in the hip, which teaches the knee to stay on track, the legs from creating any knee valgus. She has to really drive the floor away. and sitting back on the heels and leaning forward and pushing down with the front of the feet, with the balls of the feet. A lot of my clients, I'll say, feel the heels on the way down, think about the ball of the feet on the way up, just sort of get used to transferring the weight. A lot of these movements here, you can see she was just doing small amount of repetitions there, building up to this big set, because we don't like to waste too much energy when it comes down to lifting the main moves. It's more of a feel, just enough to feel the movement and get warm up. But once we're happy and we're in that zone, I just like to take us straight to that top set. There's no point in wasting time and energy playing around with sets of 15 and 20 when you know you've got more in you. It's a lot of wasted volume in my opinion. I think we reached 100 kilogram here for 2. One thing I wasn't happy with, or we weren't happy with, was the speed she sort of began the set with. We're going to work on positioning and taking more time to brace in between sets. After that, we did one back off set you won't see in the video, and we move on to these, which is the static lunge. Again, because of the issue with the knee traction, keeping stability, I like to focus on including stability in the routine, but not taking the piss. We want to keep it to a level where she can really focus on control. So these static lunges are a good variation. She can get the instability from using the barbell on top of the hip, so the centre of gravity, the weight is distributed quite high, but she's not moving, so it's not as dynamic as a traditional lunge. So you can focus on getting a nice wide stance, as you can see there, sitting on the heel of the front leg and driving that knee forward over the toes. On the back leg, you can't see from this angle, but what I like to think about doing is driving the toes into the floor and also pushing the knee away slightly. If you were to look at her directly on, her knees are both slightly pointing outward. This just helps create torque around the knee, because obviously with the hips being a ball and socket joint, it's that rotation that we need. Then we moved on to Romanian deadlifts with dumbbells, just to throw things into the mix a little bit. We save barbell deadlift versions for other sessions. We wanted again to focus on some lower back and hamstring and glute, and this gives us a bit more movement. So you can see here how the weights sort of glide outside the thigh, so there's a bit more rotation from the shoulder allowed here, rather it's not as restrictive as the bar. I think these were 32s went up to in the end for a set of 7 or 8. And then we'll superset this in with some good mornings, just to really hammer that lower back. One thing April has had issues with in the past is her posture, because she works a lot of desk work. She does insurance, so it's many hours sat at a desk with minimal movement. So a lot of our routines, now the power and the stability is starting to improve, is more on mobilisation and strengthening the lower back. Mobilisation for the knee and the hips and the lower back, as you can see here, to really help posture. So nice, low, good mornings. You might vary these with using a hat squat machine as well to give us more stability and increase the load, but for now it is mixed in the Romanians. It just seems to complement each other quite well. Moving on from those two, we then start to look at upper body. One area that I think April's neglected quite a lot, as a lot of females do, is upper chest and shoulders. It's not that she never trained them and trained lower body, it's just that she was nervous about training them all together, and with previous injuries she's had around there, she was cautious. So we've been focusing on high incline pressing movements to really try and focus on the upper chest and around the clavicular area, the front delts. Things are going to help again with posture and with strengthening her neck and shoulders up. We recently had a diagnosis from an osteopath that her upper spinal region is deteriorated somewhat, so the more strength we can have around this upper body part, the better. And then we sort of superset this in with some lateral raises. We didn't actually like the form on this first set, as you can see here. The arms for me were a bit too bent, couldn't get the extension that we quite wanted. But it was good to show you guys that it's not wrong to lift heavy weight. It still has its benefits. It's still shocking the muscle. We're still allowing to get plenty of stimulus in there. It's just something to think out going forwards. After that initial set, we went on to a lighter weight and started to really control the descent, focus on tempo. One thing we'll do quite a lot is do a heavy set to begin, and then drop down the weight, because once you're halfway, 2/3 of the way into your session, you're already warm. There's no need to overthink things and waste much energy. If you feel like you're in the groove, just get the weight to where you know you can lift, go for your big set, and then bring it down after that and focus more on technique. This again is why logging your movements, logging your workouts is important, because without this ability to know what you can lift, you can spend a lot of time wasting your energy on volume that isn't required, building up lots of sets, that top set. By the time you get there, you're tired. Imagine doing 2 or 3 sets of 15 every exercise for the entire session. By the time you get to the end of the session, there won't be much left in there. So if performance is the end goal of your session, it was worthwhile getting to the top and then working your way downwards from there. And as you'll see in a minute, we went from doing 7.5 lateral raises. These are 2.5s now, which is again where the tempo really comes into play. We focus on that squeeze at the top, extending the arms out, and really controlling it down. I always say to treat it like treacle, just keep it nice and slow with the descent. It doesn't really matter if the weight's light. People sort of give lightweight less credit than it's due, but to be honest, if you control the movement and you take your time with it and you end up lifting the weight for 30-40 seconds or more, any amount of weight is going to become difficult just because of the amount of output we're doing for such a long duration. The way you can see the arms here slightly forwards of the body, I just like this because it helps us really bias the movement into the front delt, front shoulder. If you go too far back, in my opinion, too high, you tend to shrug with the shoulder girdle and you end up getting more of a trap lift at the base of the neck. And this is where a lot of injuries, in my opinion, come from. People spend too much time throwing the weight and lifting with their traps rather than pushing it out with their shoulders. And as you can see there's plenty of point for my little zoom in. Get her face right at the end. Another favourite of mine is rear seated cable fly. I like this for numerous reasons. One is the seated position really takes the thought process out of what the rest of the body is doing. A lot of people have issues with hinge movements, sitting back on the heels with the chest down. I find this just really takes that completely out of the game. You can focus and tell on making that large semicircle with the arms. You see there's very, very little bend coming from the elbow. It's you sort of almost grabbing it with the hand and pushing the little fingers away from each other. You want to feel it more on the outskirts of the back rather than right in the centre. It's not a rhomboid fly, it's a rear delt fly, and the rear delt sits just at the back of the tricep, outside of the shoulder blade. Again, with the cable machine, it helps us practice with a bit of instability, but it lets us stay on track. I find some people with their rear fly movements or fly movements in general, anything that requires coordination, they can sort of go off track quite easily and lose that focus on the area you need to be. This lets us really think about that forward and backwards plane of motion. This really helps isolate the rear delt, and there's constant tension being applied. There is no part of the movement where there is a breathing spot, so it really helps fatigue the delt and really stimulate some growth and focus on stabilising the move even when you're at the end of your performance capability, let's say. So it's quite safe, this one, to go right to the limit and really nail it. There's not many movements I talk about redlining the body with, but with this one you're quite safe to go through with. As sessions open up again and we begin the programme, I'll give you more updates on where we're at, but this was our most recent one prior to lockdown, so I hope you like what we've seen and hopefully you can get some good info from it. Thank you.